Alexander, if you check a little bit,
Is it there? Are we live?
it should be streaming now. You can go.
It's okay? Perfect. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming, joining us today at our Finance and Carbon Markets Day at the Digital Innovation Pavilion. And I'm happy to welcome you here as one of the hosts of the pavilion. I'm with Ever City, and also we have our second host, Miroslav Polzer from Locha. He's here supporting us all the way. So today we have our great speakers in this panel, and we're gonna discuss the latest trends, some enablers, and some pain points on the way to the net zero. And here we're strong believers, I guess, of the carbon markets and decarbonization, based of course on the proper assessments of the decarbonization potential, but then also utilizing market mechanisms and of course digital innovation to enable the decarbonization and eventually enable the net zero. So why don't we start with a round of short introductions, and I'll pass the mic to our speakers so that they can introduce themselves, and I'll introduce myself at the end. So that you can have a break from me. So without any further ado, I'll pass the mic to Guillermo. Please introduce yourself. You're free to talk a little bit about what you do, what brings you here, about your company. So like about up to 5 minutes. The floor is yours. And then
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Really appreciate it for having me. So I have the longest name and the longest title, it seems, among our speakers. And I am from Mongolia originally, but I live in the US right now. And I'm a co-founder and the CEO of the ORDA. And ORDA is a regenerative finance platform that it's very global. And we have operations in Mongolia, Singapore, Korea, and United States. It's a tech startup where fintech and climate tech have a baby. That's basically what's happening. And what we aim to do is like utilizing climate data and then as well as the satellite data, creating a nice machine learning algorithm where we can optimally find the land where we should plant the trees and regenerate the soils and package it as an attractive green assets to global LPs. And that is what ORDA does. And as we go, we are piloting in Mongolia with the afforestation project. And as we go, we have faced a lot of regulatory hurdles. So as an entrepreneur, I took an approach and started talking with our regulators. Hey, this kind of innovation is happening. We're utilizing technology. And obviously, when we try to sell it, a lot of foreign LPs would require standards. What is the, MRE and who did you register with? And what is actual technicalities? Do you have taxation and figure it out if you invested and all that's coming in, right? Because we're not talking about small money. So to figure that, I have to start dialogue with the government, and government was first, no, we don't have anything. Don't talk to us. We don't do carbon, But then after convincing them several months, showing them great cases from the outside, what other countries are doing, what other problems being solved by technology. And they suddenly decided, hey, actually now we have a climate change ministry and we could use your input from the, tech leader. That is why I just got appointed about a month and a half ago, and I'm totally not a government person, but learning my ropes around there. And so I guess I walk the both paths, being the icebreaker into the new markets like Mongolia, Central and East Asia when it comes to bio and nature-based, good quality carbons, and while trying to use technology into that, bringing the new standards and interoperability of that while digitizing. It's a lot. and also helping the government to navigate their way and empowering more of a like green future strategy together with the technology and innovation. So that is what I do. I hope that was not too long. Yeah, really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Philip Moss. I am the Chief Investment Officer for Climify, which is the leading portfolio manager for permanent CDRs. So I like to say we're putting the net into net zero without having negative emissions taken out on a geological scale, time scale. We're not actually going to be able to realize net zero. So there's been a lot of focus, particularly around the carbon markets, around mitigation actions, which is certainly important, but we don't have time to wait to get onto the removals bandwagon. A lot of the projects that we are involved with take a very long time to get to market. The buyers are not there yet. We have to work on things that you mentioned, like standards and other mechanisms. And so at Climify, what we're very much focused on at the moment is how do we actually build out that market? How do we give confidence to the buyer community so that the projects which are trying to get established can seek the financing they need in order to build, and we can actually start drawing down from the atmosphere. Since, you know, as I'll boldly say, we're already at overshoot now. Talking about when we get to overshoot is a bit of a waste of time. Let's talk about what we need to do from now moving forward to get back to 1.5. So I'll have a couple of other things to add later to that.
Hello everyone, my name is Seftale Kuchnar. I am Chief Strategy and Partnership Officer of Coral. It's a UAE-based climate technology company. So I will move you a little back from what you have already said. That journey for corporates starts with baseline. Like, they need to realize and understand where they are standing now to design their strategies and also offset their emissions that they couldn't decrease in the end. So at Coral, what we are trying to do is we are trying to change and transition this very complicated, time-consuming process with the help of AI and blockchain. What we are doing is we are facilitating companies which like over hundreds of different data points to facilitate their carbon emission data collection, analysis, reporting, and from the same platform, we are offering carbon offset credits to them. We are not a marketplace, and we are very, very agnostic in the carbon credits. The only thing we would like to do is to streamline all process for one corporate. What is different than the others, because I know in the market there are like a lot of solutions like that, is our platform can digest any kind of data. And it can get connected to any kind of existing system to pull the data to automate the processes, because we want CSOs or like CFOs or CLOs, whoever is trying to do the calculations, to do it in a very prompt way. We are decreasing 90% of the time consumption in there, and focus on strategizing the actions of decreasing carbon emissions, decarbonizing their processes, etc. So that's basically what for me.
Hi everybody, nice to meet you all. My name is Philip. I am first of all an advisor to the United Nations on climate technology. I'm involved on negotiations for Article 6 and also the CTCN, which is the supervisory body for climate technology. I'm also working full-time at JP Morgan in the blockchain innovation branch, working on many types of digital solutions for both kind of decarbonization, but also for trade and other issues. Also, I am involved in many other initiatives within the research and science perspective. So really kind of looking at how can we leverage technology to address climate change.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks everyone for the introduction. So as I mentioned, I'm with a company called EverCT. And apart from hosting this wonderful pavilion, we specialize on the development of digital climate finance infrastructure. So our biggest aim is to help developing countries accelerate climate financing from multiple sources, whether it's carbon market or green debt or institutional climate financing for monsters like, GCF, what we believe in is that projects on the ground should not really learn the climate finance science, the standards, and the processes. This is the role of technology. Technology can establish the bridge between projects on the ground, project proponents, investors, but also professional market players like project developers and auditors, so that they all can save time, focus on their core businesses, grow, while the technology would enable the automation, the document creation, the curation of those, investment projects and opportunities, streamline communication, but also provide and enable transparency and trust, which might come from the technology such as blockchain. And here we're happy to partner with HBAR Foundation and Hedera, who are supporting our pavilion for the third year in a row, which helps us to bring more innovators to the UN climate process and discuss together pathways to net zero. So we have a pretty diverse crowd here, which is actually great, because I think some panels are very focused on certain topics or certain stakeholders, but we have very diverse stakeholders with diverse backgrounds, but somehow we all form a certain value chain, starting from the the international climate process, and then corporates understanding their footprints and reducing, and then offsetting as an ultimate effort to go net zero. So why don't we all talk now about the pain points that we are experiencing, because we need to solve a lot of issues, and we still lacking financing that the world needs. The negotiations process is far from ideal, and many other things. So let us talk based on your experiences and backgrounds. Starting with Relma, for example, having Mongolian perspective. So what are the problems that you're facing now?
Sure. Again, I can talk from the two different perspectives, as a startup founder, and then as well as the glimpse of the government, vision that they have in store. So as a tech founder, I think it's similar to anywhere in the world. Usually the private sectors, entrepreneurs, they always see the problem and seek for a solution. And that's how this, innovation happens. And once that happens, the policy always follows, and they don't always oversee, they don't get ready for all this yet. And as for Mongolia, the nation's GDP depends highly on mining, and we are one of the biggest coal producers in the world. And we understand that, and our government set the vision 2050, we want to diversify the economy, and it has to be more clean, it has to be more renewable, it has to be more towards the green side. And intention was there, because the opportunity for us that we see, and it aligns with what I do with my startup, is that right now there is a huge demand for transparent, reliable, and high quality credits. And to get that, we need to, not only just preserve or protect, we need to actually restore or recreate and plant more trees. But where? And Mongolia happens to be one of the biggest land mass in the Central Asia. We're the 14th biggest country on Earth, and 80% of it is uninhabited, and one stakeholder, which is government. And 80% of it, more than of it, by now is starting to become a desert, and it's a huge threat to herders and people who live in Mongolia during, traditional nomadic ways. And their livelihood is at the threat, and there are local communities that's struggling. And it's not just about environment, it becomes human rights and good governance issues, the total ESG packages happening there. And as an entrepreneur, I saw it as an opportunity. What if we capitalize all these unused, degraded lands? We need to restore it anyway, but what if we package it as a national asset, and put it into that high demand carbon market, and it is something already contributed to the environment, and then as well as the national GDP, and as well as the local communities for their economic empowerment. So it is getting well aligned. Vision is beautiful, yes, but the fact that making it a reality, it took us about 15 months to sign an agreement with the municipal government because we had to educate them about what is a carbon market, how does it work, economically, what kind of value it's going to bring, and plus the technology aspect of it. What's a blockchain? What's an AI? How do you use the data? Like, what's a data quality? How do you benchmark and all that? So every level of government, and I think Mongolian government is one of the actually easy, accessible ones. They're very open-minded usually. And I don't know other parts, but as a startup founder, going there and catching the key person is pretty quick. You can actually reach them and explain and have a time slot and move forward. But once you catch their attention, it takes forever to get anything, especially in the new markets like this. So we have been proposing different solutions, and ideally, we should be just doing our solutions, not being involved too much with it. But now we're helping them to create this national strategy, policy, and legal environments and financing solutions and all that. And another pain point I would like to say is different countries have gone far ahead of us, and we need to catch up. Meanwhile, also understanding the digital innovation. So capacity building, that transparency, interoperability of the different measures and standards are very important. Because different projects come in, they want to use different ones. Some want to use the gold, some want to use Vera, and you kind of have to start working together. And it's confusing to the governments, like they want to accept, and some want to develop their own national own credit system. So these, I think, without having a big picture and very clear action plans on the different levels, private sector, publicly, how they're going to work together, and what is in the end together as a whole nation, and then as well as the private economy, how it's going to work together. Without having that, it's always oh, you do this, I do this, kind of struggle together. So that is what have been going on with me from my experience, but hope it will improve shortly. Yeah.
How long have we got to discuss the pain points?
Continue the main points.
I'll try and keep it super brief. When you talk about the pain points in the carbon markets, I think you could go on for days on the different aspects of that. Specifically as it relates to permanent carbon removals, I'll try and pigeonhole them into kind of two broad categories. I think first is simply about risk in all its different shapes and forms, particularly from a corporate perspective. And the second piece is the demand signals. So just on the risk side of things, we've been trying to work with companies for several years. I've been running a portfolio on behalf of large multinationals like Boston Consulting Group and UBS to try and bring them into the market, give them some comfort. But we still have the same issues and questions when we deal with them. Everything from the price to having transparency about what they're buying, the fact that there aren't methodologies or standards there that they can rely on, the fact that there has been a lot of pushback against supporting negative emission technologies simply because some feel that this is pulling money away from mitigation actions, which is one of the reasons we are heavily advocating for separate targets to increase climate ambitions. But at the end of the day, what it boils down to is we need to give companies who are in the market right now a reason to buy, and we can't keep holding their feet to the coals if we want to stimulate that demand. When I talk to companies, they tell me, you know what, if I don't have to buy it and there's risk associated with it, I'd rather not buy it, right? There's no reason for them to buy it. So we need to overcome that. And the only way to really do that is by addressing the demand signals. So we need to get compliance markets to say, this is how you can trade it into a market. That will give companies confidence around the standardization piece, around what's eligible. They won't have to feel like they're getting out ahead of their skis in order to do it. But until we can address those two issues, and we have a few solutions, I think, to those, we're still going to be kind of in the cycle of talking about why we haven't got liquidity in the carbon markets.
Okay, I will take it from there. because we have two sides of the platform. Like one side is trying to pull together carbon credits it's not a marketplace, but still we're trying to have a diversification of the credits for our customers. So going to market, reaching to the project developers one by one is the biggest challenge, because there is no main mechanism working on the platform, and there is no structure for due diligence. A lot of corporates are suffering from their decisions in the past, that they have purchased like very bad quality credits, which are not like really getting to the point that they generate the credits in there, and a lot of greenwashing fights, of course. Like so. In the carbon credit side, this is the pain point, but in the carbon emission calculation side, it's another journey. Like there's no international mechanism. There are like very different structures, like SBTI, GHG protocol, or like very different structures. And consider that like my team is very different than the competitors, because we don't come from sustainability world. Like the team is coming from tech world, and they know AI, blockchain, crypto worlds very well, but they are now learning the sustainability. They're, of course, in the team sustainability people, but think about it. One of the co-founders are astrospace engineer, and he looks for granularity in the data. Like to calculate, to have a very good result in there, he wants like abstract results. There is no structure in the market like that. Everybody is like trying to look for their own mechanisms. Like there are some factors, emission factors that are calculated by governments. Some of them are from GHG protocols, etc. So what we have agreed is we tried to feed the AI with all these like very different data points, and teach the AI how to gather the data from different kind of documents like PDF, CDS, Excel files, or just like directly from the finance systems, and pull the data factor that come across with that, and show where that data factor comes for the auditability. Because we know that maybe we are not using the best factor in there, but at least when they audit, they will see where that data point is coming from, and it's flexible to change it too. So that's how we managed to have the verifiability and traceability in that front. And last but not the least, to try to explain to corporates that we are not trying to replace their chief sustainability officers with AI. Like we are just trying to facilitate the world that they are in, and we really want them to focus the climate action itself, rather than throwing a lot of Excel files or trying to select consultants, etc. So that's my world of things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely do think that AI is going to be a huge enabler, especially for the small and medium enterprises, as we get more regulation, especially what we're seeing now in Europe with, smaller companies having to report on such complicated matters that they obviously don't have any visibility or any clarity on how to do, and obviously it's gonna, really skyrocket the consulting fees for them. But hence we have such a great solution such as yours, and actually I also advise a company that is focused on basically using generative AI to write reports and fulfill all these reporting standards both in the US and in the EU. So I think definitely from that perspective, technology is going to make things much easier. But coming back to the key pain point, standardization is still a huge issue. And I was just going to cover now in terms of what's going on in the negotiation rooms in terms of Article 6. So obviously Paris Agreement almost 10 years ago has been basically, signed into force, but we still have not operationalized the Article 6, which just kind of shows the complexity and the inefficiency of the UN process at ultimately, getting simple consensus on a mechanism, and also kind of we should also evaluate what's been going on in the private market and the voluntary market in terms of the chaos that this has created, in terms of really, really poor quality carbon credits filling the market, really, projects that really should not be listed there, you know, getting go ahead. So it's been definitely a big issue and something that the negotiators definitely need to learn from. But going forward, obviously Article 6.4, which is the key clause that enables kind of the multilateral trade of carbon credits and sets certain standards and frameworks for trading that between them. That's definitely going to enable a lot more certainty. What we're really wanting to have for years now. But I think in terms of the other issues, this is just such a small problem. You have to think much broader. And I think standardization and harmonization is definitely a challenge that is yet to be addressed across the industry. But how are we going to address it needs to change going forward. And obviously we have such great tools now, especially with AI, but also in terms of looking at like the project sourcing as well, in terms of what projects get selected for the decarbonization, especially when thinking about nature-based solutions and carbon offsets. You really need to like have certain standards there as well. But then you also need to be flexible in terms of you cannot, just specialize on a certain type. So this is definitely going to be a challenge in the years to come. I think we're ready to address it, but obviously we need a lot more time and a lot more investment into the negotiation, into the deliberation of where this is going, and also industry engagement. I think industry is really key because sometimes when we're over here in the multilateral space, we kind of lose track of what we're actually going for. So it's really key to kind of involve the private sector in this and really come to a consensus with everybody.
Well, thanks everyone. I'm really amazed of the multi-dimensional, picture that we're having here at this panel. And now let's talk about the enablers, and I'll give it maybe back to Philip to provide a certain overview. Yeah, so we can go now reverse direction, and we'll start with Philip because when I was inviting him to join the panel, I was especially interested to hear from him all the updates on the negotiations on the Article 6, and especially the mechanisms that would be relevant for the carbon markets. And earlier today, we had some people that already were like showing, their content that things are getting better and, here and there. So I'd love to, give it back to Philip so that he can brief us on all the latest updates from the meeting rooms and, and the plenaries and.
Yeah, as I've said, absolutely historic. After 10 years of negotiation, Article 6.4 has been basically put into force and will be operationalized from next year. But we're still missing a lot of clarity on Article 6.2, which is basically the bilateral part of the carbon trading, which basically enables just two countries to trade. But obviously, there's a lack of standards there as well. But in terms of 6.4, I think it's definitely a key enabler in this whole market. As I've said, standards are the key, certain part of the whole market element. And without certainty, you cannot proceed, and you cannot have direct and ultimately really consistent flows of capital flowing into these projects. So that's definitely something that's yet to be thought about in terms of where we're going forward with 6.2. But 6.4 obviously has been done, and obviously there's been some concerns by certain bodies in terms of the process through which this has been done. But as always, no process is perfect. It's already taking far too long for this, and we should have been much faster. But obviously, we've done what we've done. So in terms of going forward, really, in terms of operationalizing everything, from next year, I think middle of 2025, we'll see a lot more clarity and a lot more kind of national enhancement of this article. So we really look forward to seeing what's going to happen ultimately next year.
like I think international mechanisms are so important, and like the systemic approach is the most critical thing. Like private sector needs to sit with public sector and NGOs and international organizations, and they need to do everything together, because sometimes I feel like we do expect so much from governments. Yes, they are like very strong enablers, like they are okay, they are with the grants or tax systems or like with regulations, they need to enable the market, but at the same time, they shouldn't be the reason or problem that is stopping us to continue in the way. So when we come together and try to share and empower each other, we will be able to move faster, I believe. And when we look at the technology, of course, AI is coming to the picture with being a very strong enabler. And also blockchain, even though there are like some very bad examples that lead to a lot of scrutiny in the press, I believe that if we start integrating blockchain from day one in the project, that will be enabling the traceability of it, that will be enabling the verifiability, so that there will be no duplications, etc. So as long as we implement and use the good side of the technology, it is going to be a very strong enabler.
So many different ways that we could enable the market. This is something that we've been thinking about a lot about the last, well, at least I'd say the last 5 years, which is how do we actually get more support for the specific area around durable permanent carbon removal to the market. For those that aren't familiar with it, we need to remove about 5 gigatons per year in the next 10 years. Right now, we're at about 2 gigatons. It's going to be really hard to increase existing removal solutions quickly enough to address that gap. So we definitely need to crowd in more capital for durable carbon removal. However, there is no market for it right now. It doesn't really fit in. SBTI hasn't even recognized this as part of their pathways, which has limited the one source of revenue for these projects and suppliers, which are the corporate sector, the companies. And so while I've been trying to aggregate demand, bringing companies in, we've only seen about 80 companies globally that have bought more than 1,000 tons, right? So everything you've heard about renewables taking all the money out of nature-based solutions and other types of projects is just fake news, shall we say. But that doesn't tell you what the enabler is, right? So recognizing that this is a problem, what we found in talking to companies is that there are a number of barriers for them to get into the market. We have the greenwashing issues, but beyond that, you also have issues as to whether purchasing fits into their sustainability strategy, whether they have the budget allocation for it, if their procurement team can, work this through their system. Is the company big enough to meet their KYC requirements? There's a whole host of issues, right? And I think that has delayed a lot of companies from getting involved in the market. So recognizing that specific issue and the need to scale carbon removal rapidly in order to hit our targets, we've been focused on how can we generate a true market by generating the liquidity and accessibility that companies need. And so to that effect, I'm pleased to announce right here in real time that with our partners, the X Prize Foundation, we are going to be launching a global challenge for the 1,000 largest companies in the world to commit to the purchase of 1,000 tons of permanent carbon removal in 2025. So we're hoping through this action we can have a very simple mechanism for companies to take all the reasons for not doing deals off the table, get involved in the market, take some action, see what this is all about, understand the complexities and the differentiation between permanent carbon removals and other types of climate solutions, and bring more capital into the market to help projects and suppliers. And we've already had, significant support anonymously from companies that they will take part in the challenge. So we're very optimistic that this will be something that's successful. So I'll pass it. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I was just going to say, David, would you like to say a few words about the X Prize Foundation and why you've joined us on this challenge?
I won't speak too long, but I will say the X Prize Foundation had launched the Carbon Removal X Prize. This was a $100 million prize to demonstrate pathways to durable removal and storage. We know that this industry needs to go to the gigaton scale. And even as we were approaching the announcement of the Carbon Removal X Prize winner in April of 2025 during Earth Day, we are talking to the top 20 teams that are the most promising pathways for carbon removal. And they are telling us, yes, of course, it's going to be great to win the prize if we do. But the thing that is the most daunting and concerning about how these pathways are going to scale to that gigaton level is the uncertainty of the markets. The advanced market commitments that are there, the incongruous nature and disparate nature of how attributes are defined, how they're monitored, those sorts of things around the world. And so what we need to do is really take a look at what are the markets, how are they being stood up, getting the commitments for attributes into those markets. And that is going to be the thing that allows the pathways that the Carbon Removal X Prize have demonstrated to scale to the gigaton level and actually have the impact that they need to have. So this is a first step in demonstrating that companies should be buying these attributes, making commitments to buy these attributes. This is, as Philip was mentioning, needs to be a parallel component. Yes, we know we need to reduce emissions, but this is a separate issue. We need to stand up and scale an enormous negative emissions industry in parallel as we are also reducing emissions from industrial sectors and elsewhere. So, turn it back over. Thanks.
Then relations again, and we'll just finish this round with
Congratulations, and I echo all of our fellow panelists on the different enablers, and I agree in all the things that the components that we mentioned. But also another key pain point is that I'll say the pain point, and I think I'll say how we can enable that through what. And it's that, there are project developers, environmental scientists, government, and then, LPs are the buyers, and they don't quite speak the same language. And yes, we do have all this data, and we do have the needs, demand, and all that. So when you package up all these removal projects into an investable asset, and then also convince the governments that this is something you should be helping, not stopping, right? Like more or less like laissez-faire, the capital rule. Leave it alone if you're not gonna improve it. Don't step in and let the market develop on itself and find the more transparent demand and supply on its own and enable the innovation. So I think from the tech founder perspective, we just want to continue innovating it and keeping those data, making sure the different parts kind of translate and understand each other. Because investors, they only want to look few checkpoints, like whether it's should I deploy my money into it or not. And then meanwhile, the civil society is looking into more impacts. Is it really helping the local communities or economic empowerment and indigenous people? And then on the other hand, project developers, they really want to create this good quality product themselves. So having good communication, enabling and translation among them through an AI, blockchain, the things that they seek, we can provide it very clear, good clarity together. And that is something really powerful enabler. And that's where the technology steps in, all these different languages, just like we use Google Translate to, find or navigate our routes or maps. There should be this data translation or the communication set up together. And from the government perspective, especially coming from Mongolia, we know it's very important. It has to move forward. It's catching up and understanding the facts that private sector is a key driver when it comes to a carbon market. So instead of like trying to take away their projects, how about creating more conducive legal or infrastructure for them to go in and actually enable the unlock this big market. And I think that's where I would advise my governments and continue like do that. And another enabler that I think very important is that understand that the incentivizing is very important, because in the end of that, private sector enterprises, they just want to continue doing their business, increasing their revenue, sustaining their business, right? But at the same time, they all have to understand by offsetting, by buying the carbon credits, it's gonna help you to sustain your business longer. And having that again is communication, I think, and enabling that with the technology, just blockchain for transparency, and then making things easier, interoperable with the AI and all the data translation. I think it's extremely important.
Thanks to all the panelists and highlighting those enablers. I totally agree with you. I might just highlight another topic on which we are also focused in diversity and with other partners and ecosystem members is the free finance, so upfront finance, because there are lots of mechanisms, investment vehicles like carbon, and loans and bonds, and we just had a VC panel here, which is I think a very new topic for COP, because I haven't attended. It's my 9th COP. I haven't attended any VC session here at COP, so we have this first VC session here, which it might be a historical milestone, might be not. I don't know, because there's so much going on. But upfront financing is especially important because there are lacking pieces of the value chain, and there's the death valley, in which many climate projects are falling and never recovering because carbon credits they come later on when you're already registered and paid for everything and implemented the big part of your project, and so on and so forth. So we really need that, and I think technology can be an enabler and can actually unlock new types of investors that would come in and invest in climate projects. So that's what we're working on as well. But I want to switch to the last topic, last question for our panel. Maybe then we can open up for 1 or 2 questions. COP has been always criticized for not really making progress and not making anything concrete that comes out of these meetings and parties and whatever we are having here, fun times, right? So why don't you guys indicate like 1 or 2 milestones or achievements that you're gonna share next year in Belém or in Rio, or let's see, it's gonna be Brazil. But what are you guys gonna share in Brazil? What are you guys gonna reach in a year's time? So please share with us what are you thinking of?
Okay, I don't know. So at least from my personal company perspective, and hopefully we would have at least 250,000 tons of carbon based on the nature-based solutions. That's actual case, afforestation and as well as the soils grassland restoration, and being successfully deploying the funds into that and have cases to be shared, the actual pain points and exactly what happened and how do we solve those solutions. And also I would like to bring in maybe a scalable solution that's used as a case in Mongolia, and perhaps like different parts of the world can take it and customize it and use it for own ways of enabling the market. So I hope that's what it is. And I want to add a little bit on the previous questions, if I may. And it's the whole point of using technology. Innovation is that making it inclusive and giving equal opportunities to everybody. And even this regular economy now, we're talking about big banks, big funds and enablers and all that. But using a digital innovation and technology, we hope to reach all those unincluded parts, and especially when it comes to national level as well, like countries that are not there yet, and they cannot comply for all the existing this like huge complicated system. But hopefully, like platforms like Evercity would enable small nations, like small communities, to actually tackle their own like climate finance issues and contribute to the climate carbon market. Yeah.
Well, actually, it sounds like I need to hang out with you at the next COP if you're going to all these parties. But look, I think our ambitions are quite simple. For those of you that didn't have a coffee this morning, obviously we're going to measure success by are we able to get a million tons or more of new demand from 1,000 companies into the market? Can we start building some liquidity there through the global 1,000 CDR challenge? I think secondly, and obviously a significant enabler for this market to grow will be to be able to separate out the removals targets from other types of climate action within the NDCs. Having this embedded just creates a lot of tension between the use of funds. We want to raise climate ambition. We're not trying to reduce it. And so having a separate target would provide those mechanisms not only to ensure that funding is going where it's supposed to go, but also from a reporting standpoint, allowing companies to understand how they can establish their own targets and start driving capital towards those objectives.
Mine will be like a Christmas wish list in the end, probably. So from regulation perspective, I hope that there will be a little more clarity on what we are looking at and what is expected from the companies to report and analyze. From the carbon credit perspective, of course, there is more interest in the market, and because of the new mechanisms and AI and blockchain coming to the picture, I expect companies to be a little more brave to move on, because in the last 2 years we are seeing a structure in the market that a lot of the companies are stepping back on carbon credits. And on scope 3, actually, we all know that it's a very, very long journey for a lot of companies and also countries to calculate and understand that out. We have a way of interpreting it, of course, but I do expect from the market to have a little more clarity on how we can do life cycle analysis and scope 3 calculations. There was one more thing that was in my mind and I completely forgot that. Okay, I will pass, and when it comes to it, I will just refer back.
I definitely agree, and I wanted to echo, especially on scope 3, it's such a big challenge, especially when we're looking at supply chains and how complicated they are and how complicated they will get, given that we're having such huge diversification in the supply chains, and obviously MNCs really wanting to go and both localize but also globalize some of their operations, really bringing in a lot of complexity. And obviously, as I've said before, and I'll always say again, we need technology here to address this challenge, and obviously more partnership, more integration, less siloed systems. I think what we have right now in terms of both the accounting but also generally the broader carbon market issues is that we're siloing in the whole end-to-end life cycle. And that does leave a lot of scope for entrepreneurship, a lot of scope for having different providers. But sometimes actually that is not really beneficial, because the process is just too segregated, and it just leaves a lot of ambiguity and a lot of room for error. So ultimately, you need to have more partnership, as I've said before, in terms of how can we all streamline this process, how can we all still remain competitive in terms of the whole business structure, but also have more, as I've said before, and I will always say again, more harmonization in the whole end-to-end life cycle. So these are some of the things that I'm really excited about. Obviously, from sustainable finance, it goes much broader. We really need more capital flows, but as we have seen, these upcoming regulatory advances are really going to help us get more flows into nature in general.
I will distract a little. I remembered what I was going to say. So I wish that in the companies like this, like carbon accounting and carbon credits and decarbonization sits more in the boards while taking their decisions for the future of their businesses, because it's not just about sustainability of the planet, it's about sustainability of their businesses too. And when they are taking actions, I think it's very important for them to see the data on how each business decision is going to impact the carbon emissions, so that they can move ahead. Like, I hope that we will all have our carbon notes, like we have our financial notes, so that we will put more emphasis on that front, personally and as a company.
Yeah, I'll also share a very concrete plans that we want to achieve in a year and present them in Brazil. So since we have these three verticals, I'll start with the first one, carbon. So I hope that we can digitize even more methodologies and PDDs, and so our city platform could help create not only just one PDD automatically, or like now the VM47 forestation bureau methodology, but maybe like 20 methodologies, or at least the key ones, like the mangroves and some of the others, nature-based, and not only. Then on the green bond, green debt side, I hope that we can collaborate with a major development finance institution to enable the issuance of a 2 or 3 billion project-based green bond, and we can link, the bond to the individual climate projects that would be, reducing or absorbing CO2, and then we can link the carbon credits to this green bond and present this, using the digital infrastructure in a transparent, traceable manner. And then on the institutional climate financing space, we had an ocean climate fund that was launched here, presented here at the Digital Innovation Pavilion earlier during our Ocean Day. And they aim to raise 100 million, including 30 million from the Green Climate Fund. So I hope that in a year in Brazil, they're gonna, presenting their closure, and they're gonna start distributing the funding to projects, also partnering with us and the infrastructure that we can provide. And finally, that in Brazil we could have a much bigger and much more powerful digital innovation pavilion, which would be 100 or 150 meters, that would have different areas and would host even more cool panels like the one we had just now. And all of you are invited, and hopefully we can reconnect, present our achievements to each other, and plan for the next year, because we need to do more and more to reach the Paris Agreement goals and the Sustainable Development Goals. So with this, I want to thank our audience, our speakers, our partners, and open up for questions, like 1 or 2 questions. We still have some time. So are there any questions? Please introduce yourself.
Here. No, I was going to toss it here. So thank you for your time and sharing all the information. I was just wanted to ask some questions about, yes, because you said we need to collaborate with government not to stop. And I totally agree with that, because data about carbon emissions and pollution is really important, and we can collaborate with government to use that data to protect our national parks and natural preservation. And actually, for recent years, I was researching a lot about how we can still use for carbon and oil and not to damage the nature. So it actually shows that there's a way for to use oil and carbon, but not pollute the nature by reserving the these carbon gases under the soil. And also, actually, when you think about it, it's just simple way is like the easiest way to do that, but it's really effective. So there's 300 gigaton of carbon gas in the air right now, in the atmosphere. But data also shows that by planting trees, but also considering biodiversity, you can achieve carbon emissions by trees. They capture the carbon and use it for better way for nature. So when you plant a plantation, oil plantation, by also planting a forest nearby with necessary data and protecting the biodiversity at the area, you can reduce the pollution and achieve a better result. So what do you think we can, how we can collaborate with organizations and with government to achieve these goals?
Yeah, and I think it's a very common, and every country is kind of like questioning the similar stuff, right? And yes, it's great if we can replace as much as we can, walk away from the fossil fuels or like oils and all that. But in reality, we have to be practical. Like it still contributes to the economy. It's if it's possible, why not find a way that coexist and find ways to continuously eliminating it. And I believe earlier I was saying Mongolia, it's highly dependent on the fossil fuels, and there are so many minings. Like all the mining giants are doing coal, gold, rare minerals, and now we have all this like nuclear power plant issue going on as well. So whenever it happens, I think it just like really all the stakeholders' responsibility, the mindset that they have to have, it has to be sustainable. And you cannot just come in and dig out all the resources and dump it, That government job is to make sure, like, keep the companies accountable. Like, if you're mining and taking the resources, you still have to restore parts of it. It's their responsibility. And unfortunately, the CSR and like ESG sustainability parts get mixed, and most companies just throw some money and then think that they're done their job. And that's where the civil society comes in to keep them, responsible. Like, no, you did not do what you were promised. So it's a multi-stakeholder like partnership together, and obviously technology has to be used like for the transparency, like the restoration of the mining pits, for example. We could definitely use remote sensing data, AI, and blockchain for data, and that we can say how much you actually dug out and used, and how about the forest you're planting to balance it out. Is it really there? Maybe forest fire took it, or is it really actually removing the CO2 that's you have been emitting? So this way, just keeping the track of it, stay account of it, and keeping each other responsible, they have to work together. And also incentivize, right? It has to be triple win problem for everybody. For business, we want to make a profit, and we can't always just give away monies for it, without any impact. And on the other hand, the civil society, they want to make sure there is an impact, and government has to create an environment and infrastructure to enable this together. So it's like very cyclically balanced, like ideally, right? And there are some cases in Mongolia, some companies like really like non-polymer, for example, they have done that. Yes, they use it, but at the same time, they have been trying to become more sustainable mining cases that collaborate on this and measure it and put it out there. But they couldn't because of this like different EU standard, Asia standard, and whatnot. The different standardizations and having it accountable. So I think it should be there, and we should really get there all together. And everybody has to set their minds that we have to work on this together.
Okay. You have a question? It's a quick one. Sure. Okay. Let's have one quick one. Thanks, guys. Oh yeah, I'm Nick Brown. I'm a graduate student at Princeton University, and I work part-time with the experts team on climate and energy topics. My question is, there's a lot of excitement at this COP around the new standards relating to Article 6.4, but I'm left wondering, there's a lot of space between the negotiators in those rooms and the market actually using 6.4 approved methodologies to scale and become much more liquid quickly. So from where you sit, how do you see the sector moving from here to there and leveraging the new standards to get there? for anyone who wants to speak.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid question. I think in terms of the process, as I've said, we try to incorporate the private sector into this as much as possible. And what they have given us was obviously to some extent included, but not entirely. And it never will because, you know, the demands of the private sector, I won't go into too much detail because we don't have too much time, but obviously completely, you know, do not fulfill what we want to have in terms of the harmonized infrastructure behind the carbon market. But in terms of what we need to do now to basically operationalize this, as I've said, we need to work with local governments to obviously, first of all, build capacity to help them understand where this is heading. And then they will also, this will ultimately trickle down to the private sector and also to the standardization bodies. So that's ultimately the process.
Okay, so thanks everyone for the great and very interesting panel. We have two more panels today. So the next one would be a panel by Spar Foundation, our long-term partners. They're gonna, you know, tell more about how they enable transparency with their Guardian framework. And then we're going to have another panel with EverCT and some of our partners like Alcott, one of the biggest carbon project developers in the world, and some auditors to deep dive into concrete solutions that we are developing and also make some announcements. So you're invited. But thanks again. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having you here. The wonderful speakers, the great audience. So let's make the world a better place together. Thank you. And yeah, let's